I'm Jake Garcia, the Vice President of Data and Technology Strategy at the Foundation Center, joined here by Amanda Dillon, Manager of Strategic Philanthropy. And today we're going to go over a couple of the new features that are live now inside Foundation Maps, and especially regarding the new taxonomy and a couple of other enhancements that we've done to Foundation Maps, and we've launched them relatively quietly in the last couple of weeks. The first one that I think is worthy of explaining, and I think that there's a lot of depth here. I'm trying to go relatively light when talking about this. We have a new taxonomy, and this is a new taxonomy that's being used across the entire Foundation Center, but it's also now inside Foundation Maps and many of our other products. There is a site called it's taxonomy.foundationcenter.org that actually has an explorer where you can explore the entire taxonomy. And there's subjects, there are population groups. We'll go over it. I'll show you in a little bit more detail the kinds of things that is. Sorry, 1 second. Looks like nothing is being shared right now. I no one can see my screen. There. Now this should make a little more sense. So the Philanthropy Classification System, the PCS, is our new taxonomy. And what you're seeing here is something that if you go to taxonomy.foundationcenter.org, you can see, start to explore the different facets of the taxonomy. And we'll look at it. I'll show you some screenshots and maybe I'll do a demo at the end of how you can explore the new taxonomy in the Foundation Center, in Foundation Maps. So there are what we call facets of the taxonomy. Subjects is one of them, and that's the major one that most people usually look at. It includes like health and education and the arts, and then under arts there's museums, and under museums there's art museums, history museums, etc. Population groups, that's a breakdown of the grants given by either ethnic groups or poverty level or gender. Support strategy. That's a relatively new one, and transaction type. They used to be together in something called types of support. We'll go show you a couple of examples of that. When you're logged into Foundation Maps, you can search the subjects by doing a couple of things. You can click basically on subjects, or you can just type in the subject area. But this shows that if you click on agriculture, fishing, and forestry, then you can go into just agriculture, and under that there's farm viability. And farm viability, I believe, is a new taxonomy item. And then next to under farm viability, there's 3 subcategories: agricultural cooperative, agricultural education, and farm bureaus and granges. Now, this means that there's 4 levels to the taxonomy. It's not always 4 levels, but there's a lot more depth in some certain areas where we have a lot of evidence of grant making. There's other places where, and maybe I don't have the slide here. One of the real reasons that we did this cleanup of the taxonomy was that there was a lot of confusion in it. There used to be, for instance, 4 different types of health categories, and now there's just 1 health category. Again, when I do a demo, I can show that. But so it streamlined it, but also did some good things for us where we've got some modern terms like STEM education, things like that. The new areas, support strategies and transaction type, what I've kind of highlighted here is that, under more filters, there's 2 things. One's called support strategy, one's called transaction type. And we'll show you a couple of examples of what those are. For support strategy, it's things like general operating support, but in some cases, you could look at capital infrastructure and then, collections, acquisitions, or some other, kind of capital infrastructure funding. So this is separate than the type of transaction where it's like, is it a grant, or is it a PRI, or is it a Foundation Administered Program? This is saying, the nature of the support that's being given by the Foundation. Similarly, if you look at transaction type, there's going to be cash grants. Almost all the grants, a normal grant, what we consider a normal grant would be considered what we call a cash grant. But there's also other types: employee matching gifts, Foundation Administered Programs, grants to individuals, in-kind gifts, matching grants, et cetera, et cetera. And this and support strategy will be growing over time as we get different kinds of data into the database. Will be what we call internally new forms of philanthropy they will be added here in this section. Also new is population served, or actually the new, I guess, newly shaped part of the taxonomy. The population served was there before, but now it's structured a little bit differently. And in this case, we've got the economically disadvantaged people, and then that you've got extremely poor, homeless people, low-income and poor, and working poor. A lot of grants can be actually target multiple populations served. So you can see there's lots of new categories, and we got rid of a lot of old ones. It should be relatively intuitive, but I encourage you guys to explore it and get back to us with any feedback you have about it. Generally speaking, when we talk about where do you get this stuff? Where do you get access to the taxonomy? Well, the easy one is subjects, is kind of right up on top of the map. You can either just start typing, or you can click the Browse Subjects button and you can explore it. Under more filters, that's you're going to have population, group, served, and support strategy and transaction type. Or you could just go click on the advanced search button and it has all the filters available in one place, so you don't have to go fishing for any specific one thing. And then showing an example of how it's used. In this case, and again, I can demo this, but the population group here is low-income and poor people, and I chose the recipient location of California. The subject I chose as mental health care, and the support strategy was capacity building and technical assistance. So by matching up these four, so it's not capacity building nationwide. It's actually specifically capacity building for mental health for low-income poor people, where the recipients are in California. That's kind of I kind of made these up on the fly, and I was surprised that there were any grants that matched this description at all. In this case, there are 54 grants, $6.6 million, 19 funders and 42 recipients, and then you can start to go and explore. And I think I've got examples here. Here's one example of one of those grants. So you can see in the more detailed section of the grant description that the subject is mental health care, the population served, low-income and poor people is one of the populations served. It also included male adolescents and generally ethnic and racial groups in the United States. Support strategy is system and operational improvements. I believe that is a subcategory of capacity building and technical assistance. Transaction type, as expected, is cash grants, although there are other kinds of transaction types. And what we haven't really gone over today, which is still the same, is the geographic area served as Alameda County. So this actually gives a lot more context than just the description. Description says, for a training institute and learning community to enhance the capacity of school-based mental health providers to address the unique needs of low-income urban male youth of color in Alameda County. What this does, by putting the taxonomic items here, extracting them from the description, allows us then to do different kinds of aggregates so that you can combine them in different ways and then get your overall thing. And you can export your map, or you can see where they're concentrated, who the top funder is, that kind of thing. So it's not that the taxonomy stuff has changed so dramatically that it changes the functionality. It's just that there are a couple of new terms. It's a little bit more streamlined. And overall, I think it kind of speaks to a more modern language. The last time we actually changed the taxonomy, it was 18 years ago. And a few things were added and subtracted over time, but we knew some things like STEM education and other things that are coming up and becoming more codified terms that the philanthropy world uses. We were to make sure we incorporated them. There's been some improvements. There are a couple of things that we really wanted to point out. In the case where we're looking a second ago at the Zellerbach Family Foundation, a grant to the San Francisco Study Center, well, when you're actually looking at them, we used to only have the mission included here, and we actually have a lot more data on the foundation. So we have their background, grant-making programs, on and on. There's pretty long descriptions for some foundations. Some are longer than others, but it actually gives a lot more context and can give you more information about the foundation if they're of interest. Another one that was kind of been requested by a lot of folks is when you're looking at a foundation profile, let's say you pull up Zellerbach Family Foundation, you look at the loan profile, you can look at the grants list. There's a thing here called subjects, and when you click on subjects, it gives you what we call the windrows internally, because it looks like flowers of a rose and the wind is blown and knocks some of the petals off. But we just call it subjects. it shows here the distribution of the grants by subject. So you can see here there are 1,000, for Zellerbach Family Foundation, 1,000 of their grants in the last 8 years or so were made to arts and culture, then human services, then some public policy, it looks like, or public safety, and then education, and then down and down. Well, people started using this. You can drill down and explore it. It's pretty fun. But when people said, I want this, I need this for my reports. And so what we did is we added something where you can actually create a PDF of this, and the next screenshot shows, if I was to click, I did click that earlier today, click the PDF button, it downloads it, and then you've got a handy one-page PDF, and you can use for your own reports or other purposes. It's pretty handy. We love it if you guys would try it out and get back to us and see if that's really the case, but I think it's pretty cool. Constellations. Now this part is my absolute favorite part of Foundation Maps. It's really cool, it's really fun, and if you guys have used Foundation Maps, if not yet, use Constellations, you don't even have to click any filters or do anything, just click on Constellations and see what happens. It's pretty cool. And what it's basically showing is the links between foundations and nonprofits, and those links are in the form of grant making. So in this case, we're looking at, and it looks like I've already chosen some of that stuff, so like we had before. So recipients in California, where the subject is mental health care, where the population is low-income and poor people, and basically what we're showing is there's 919 relationships, meaning foundation to nonprofit. One foundation to one nonprofit would be one link or one relationship. In this case, we're just showing the top 300 by grant making. So these are the most high-dollar relationships. And so you can see here the California Endowment is here in the middle, California Wellness Foundation, where it's kind of bluey, the teal is foundations, and where it's orange is nonprofits. And you can see already a couple of things. The ones who are the most connected, who are most central to the network, their names are already highlighted when you get there. So you don't have to really start guessing and clicking around too much. So we can see that the most connected foundations and nonprofits, all the names are right here. One of the other parts that people had talked to us about that was a little frustrating, this doesn't help you when you're on a mobile device, but when you are working on a laptop or a desktop computer, hovering. So when you hover over this is the example of if I was to hover over this orange dot, South Bay Center for Counseling then pops up, the name pops up, and you can get there, it shows you their first degree connection. So it means you can really quickly just hover over everything and just figure out, who's this guy over here in the corner, and it's pretty fast and easy. And then the last new feature is the tabular list. We changed it so that when you're in Constellations, let's go back here, and you click on this tabular button right here, you want to see the list. Like the mobile view is cool, but maybe you want a list. What it will do is it will sort all the institutions by the number of connections. So the California Endowment has the largest number of relationships in this little model, and then you can see it down like San Francisco Foundation at 10. Some of them are foundations, some are nonprofits. So the foundations are the teal, and the nonprofits or the recipients of grants are in this kind of orange. And you can see here, usually when they have lots of connections, they're also central to the network. There are cases, like in this case right here, where there's some that are not very central. They're just maybe they have one relationship with a foundation, or they're kind of on the edge of the network. So this way is just a little bit more user-friendly way of displaying the list to use the data. And then what you can do, again, I'll demo this in a second, is you can click on any one of these institutions. Like here I clicked on Corestone, and what it'll do is highlight Corestone in the Constellation, and then you can actually click, I believe here, click here to go get the data about Corestone and look at these relationships with these foundations. And then lastly, and this one's kind of experimental, you can go to the network section, and then we randomly kind of create, well not randomly, we randomly named these networks. They're usually statistically more together than they are apart. And so it creates a bunch of these networks, sub-networks. So if you hover over them, like in this case I hovered over network I, and that kind of highlighted this little sub-network right here. And so it'll help you kind of identify little clusters. And then if you look at the institution names, it says network Q, network A, network G. I don't know, we think it's kind of cool. It's kind of fun, but it's a work in progress, and this is the kind of thing we really want to talk to you all about and figure out if it's useful, if it's nice to have, is just something to play around with. I really want to get down to figure more out about it. So, webinar's been pretty fast. Maybe I'll demo stuff, and we'll take some questions in a sec. But this is basically what we've covered. The Philanthropy Classification System. There are new subjects, new pop groups. There are now support strategy and transaction type, which are new. They used to be called types of support, but we split those into two, and that's a little more logical. And then the new improved, we expanded the profiles. We allowed exporting PDF, printing the windrows, and then Constellations has a lot of new functionality that should make it a little bit more user-friendly. And with that, let's see here. And you can always email us at maps@foundationcenter.org and ask us any questions. How do I use this? Why do I do that? I saw you demo something, but I can't find it. Feel free to ask us any questions, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Are there any questions?
There's no questions quite yet, so maybe
Great.
we can live demo.
Great.
And please, if you have been saving your questions until the end, please either unmute yourself on the phone or type into the Q&A box on your webinar your question, and Jake will answer it.
So I'll run through a demo real quick. And the demo right now, this is when you get into Foundation Maps, it's going to show you something about the taxonomy and show you the description of the things I just went over, about windrows and constellations and profiles. You just click out of that. At the very bottom, if this is annoying, you can just click on this, don't show this message again, so that every time you log in, it won't keep popping up. So here we get the big old world view. And let's do, I'm going to do something on the fly. Let's go look at Miami. So we type in Miami there. I'm just using the arrow key and then hitting enter. Now we've narrowed it down to Miami, which is cool. Okay, we got 756 recipients of grants in Miami. That's what we're looking at with these bubbles. Let's go browse subjects, and let's say that I'm interested in the arts in Miami. So we got arts. There's art services. What are these art services? Artist services, councils, education, etc., humanities, history, performing arts, and then under music, we're going to have folk and indigenous, music ensembles, opera, orchestra, vocal music. Let's say that I'm really just generally interested in music in Florida. Okay, now we've got 30 recipients, 69 funders, $11 million. We can go look at the list. Let's go look at this list, and we can see that, Knight and Adams and Audrey Love are the biggest foundations giving to recipients. But it looks like we've got the Florida Opera, Miami Foundation, Seraphic Fire. These are music-related nonprofits in Miami. And then we can actually look at individual grants. We can look at this one from the Miami Foundation. We can see that the subject is orchestral music. There's no population served, but there is capacity building as a support strategy, endowments as a support strategy, and it's in Miami. Let's go then look at how that shapes out in Constellations. So Constellations, it's going to take a second to load, it's going to think about it, it's going to give you a little instruction thing, and then here we have the Constellations, which is going to kind of hover around, and we automatically see the names of these institutions that are important in the network, and then all you got to do is drag stuff around with your mouse. You grab it, drag that guy away. Who's this guy over here? Miami Foundation, Asian Neighborhood. Let's see what's going on here. So let's pick one. Let's get these guys. The Miller Foundation, they gave one. So you can click on the bubble, and then you can drill in and go get the data about them. And let's say that I wanted to get this a list. So here I've got my list of the foundations, and as I hover over them, it'll highlight them where they are in the network. So I'm hovering over the Knight Foundation, and it actually highlights them here in the app. So, and then you can click on it and also get the data. And then let's go over to networks, and it looks like there's a couple of different networks here. If you highlight them, like here, Network F is over in that upper corner. Network D is over down here in the lower left. Highlight there. So it's pretty cool. A lot of fun stuff to play around with. And I believe there's a question.
Yeah, we got a couple questions. So one of them is actually regarding the Constellations feature. Can you explain the difference between the most connected and most central organizations in Constellations?
Yes. Usually, I believe we might have left some information at the bottom of the page. Usually a foundation who has the most number of connections is usually the most central. In this case, it means that in Florida Grand Opera, right, there's lots of foundations that it got, but it might just have lots of relationships, but it might just be by itself and not part of the overall network. When something is actually essential to the network, it means that it's kind of like a broker in a way. It's kind of like it's more connected with more people who are also connected. So it's it's like a socialite in a way, the connector of different institutions. So again, usually the ones with the most number of connections are the most central, but in some cases you might have a very central one that actually has very few connections, but it's really important because maybe like there's a big network of Jewish schools and a big network of non-religious private schools. They might have their own little networks, but there might be a couple of nonprofits or foundations you give to both sides, and they end up becoming more central because they connect to two different networks.
Okay, next question is, how was the new taxonomy developed?
How was the new taxonomy developed? Well, it was long. It was a long and painful process. Well, painful for me, and probably for most people. Taxonomists really enjoy it, so I should not the process. It was an open process. We consulted with lots of nonprofits and foundations. It was several years. I believe it was 3 years in the making, something like that. And the last time we did it was, I think, 18 years ago. And there are some foundations and staff actually who worked on that version 18 years ago. So it was, we actually consulted lots of different groups, and then lots of groups of foundations who actually worked on individual areas. Like I know that we talked, for parts of it, I know we consulted with experts. So I believe I'm looking here for there's stuff related to animals that, that we actually consulted with different grant makers who are specialists that work in different particular sectors. And then we actually because there's not going to be 100% agreement on the taxonomy, because we do sub-taxonomies all the time, that we actually then kind of had a process of kind of narrowing it down, making sure we get the common denominator among all the different recommendations we got. And then we also had to make sure that we actually had grants that fit into some of the categories. Because there are categories like, you could say, hey, what about mining? Or what about, the sectors that the World Bank has, for instance. Well, it ends up that there already are grant, U.S. foundations don't make grants for mining, typically. So there are some category recommendations that we just didn't end up thinking were appropriate to philanthropy. And then we actually the process got really crazy. We had to recode all of our data from the old taxonomy and put all the grants into the new taxonomy. So it was very time-consuming, and there was a lot of labor for that one. However, I would say that if you go to taxonomy.foundationcenter.org, which I can see here, it is not a closed process. We actually want it to live and breathe. So if people have recommendations about things that should be added or could be added or that'd be more helpful, there's Ask a Taxonomist here. You can submit questions about the taxonomy or things that you think should be added. You can also explore the different facets and get descriptions of them. So if we said, let's go to agriculture, fishing, aquaculture, sustainable fishing, it'll have a description of what this really means and why. And we'll probably have this built into Foundation Maps at some point. But it's pretty detailed in here. But if something ends up being not quite right or needs to be hashed out more or whatever, this is the kind of thing we want it to be able to grow and not wait 18 years. We want to be able to change it a couple of times a year.
Okay, great. So that actually answers another question someone had about can new categories be added to the taxonomy?
Yes, they can and will be added. Let's say that there's a new subject or new subcategory. Let's go look in art and culture. And let's just say that, let's go to performing arts and music. Well, I see all these here, but I don't see heavy metal here at all. So imagine a world in which foundations decide that heavy metal is really in dire straits, and they start funding, then we have all these grants for it, then we would add that category in here, and then it would be findable that way. But we really need to hear from foundations or see lots of data coming in that means that it warrants a new category.
Okay, great. Next question is, do taxonomical categories have to be mutually exclusive?
No. There are cases when you do, right now the way Foundation Maps works is looking at what we call one of the subjects. In reality, a lot of these grants have multiple subjects. And so it's going to be an enhancement that we're going to be putting in for the next webinar, where you can look at the secondary subjects, because a grant could be for music, let me think of another one, music education. It could be related to education and the arts and the environment, for instance. So grants actually get lots of different codes in many cases, especially codes to go to universities. So a university might get a science grant. Well, it would fall under, could fall under graduate professional education, but then it would also fall under the sciences. So they are not necessarily mutually exclusive. We know that in the real world, there's lots of overlap between taxonomic items.
Okay, another question is, how many subject area codes can a grant have?
Wow, detailed question. It's a good question. I think what we're trying to do is limit it to 5, and that's simply because when you get much more subjects than that, it kind of means everything. But right now it's 5. I think we have it in the database. We could expand it in the data models like 10 or infinite. A grant could have all the subjects. But typically, grants usually have 2 or 3 subjects on the whole.
Okay, so if there are any other questions from the audience, please go ahead and type them into your Q&A box, or feel free to unmute yourself.
And while waiting, I'm going to go look at Miami Foundation, and I'm going to demonstrate the PDF thing. So here's subjects. So it looks like the Miami Foundation, which I am not personally aware of. Here, their the distribution of grants. You can just see it by the amount of money. So actually, the money they have looks like money they have received has been in the form of general philanthropy, but also for the arts and a few other categories. Let's say that and let's say I wanted to drill in to arts, see what their arts funding is like. I can see that's mostly performing arts. I can click on the PDF button, and then it just downloads the PDF, and then I can just go, and it should render in a second. Da-da-da, and there's the PDF, and then I can just go look my day, email it to myself, or put it on some drive or whatever, put it inside a report.
Great.
Okay.
So we're going to maybe wait a couple more minutes. You want to maybe show example of constellations or maps?
Yeah, I'll show another, going back to the map, we're looking at Miami, clear everything off. Okay, let's look at types of support. Support strategy and transaction type. So support strategy, we've got, let's say, capital building and technical assistance and mergers, seed money. Look at seed money. It's going to go filter it down. We actually have 5,100 grants that were categorized as seed money. Let's go look and see one of those examples of those grants for seed money. Well, Crystal Bridges, this is a pretty big one. Let's put that one up. You see here that support strategies, general support and seed money and capital infrastructure, collections, acquisitions, this makes sense, this is a big art museum, and endowments. Let's look at another one. And let's see, path here, 2006, an older grant. Looks like this was capacity building and seed money for projects to establish regional learning community among certain African countries and development best practices for scaling malaria control for impact. So as you can see, the support strategy is actually pretty useful.
Great. Okay, so a couple more questions just came in. Are you developing a PDF of the new taxonomy to give to patrons?
There is, you know what there is? I think there's a couple ways you can do it. You can look, when you go to taxonomy.studycenter.org, you can look at the visual navigator, which will have this thing you can explore. That's not really exportable though. Let's give you the export. Where is that export section? Download options. Oh, there's PDF. So if you go to download options, it says full PCS with definitions. Click on this. And right now there's an Excel version. And the Excel, we'll download it in a second, is, because it's pretty, this was a big old list. That's actually lists of lists. You can open it up. And here we've got subjects and a bunch of, all the subjects, all the definitions are here. You can look at population, see all the codes, see the definitions and the subcategories, strategies, support strategy, transaction type, and what we did not cover yet, it's not information out yet, is the organization type. So the best way to do it then is to download a PDF, Excel version of this from taxonomy.foundationcenter.org.
Great. Another comment, you mentioned there might be some overlap categories for a grant. How do you assign taxonomy for those grants? How many categories in the same level can you assign for grants?
I guess it's unlimited, but really, practically speaking, usually it's around 2, 3, 4, or 5 per grant. If we look at, let's look at that PATH grant. In this case, the subject was malaria. It's pretty straightforward. If we look at this grant, Davidson College, it says undergraduate education. In reality, there's a lot more, because this is going to be arts and sciences. There's going to be a few other categories. So there can be usually 4 or 5. And how we categorize them is done. We used to do it by hand. Basically, we've got a bunch of data analysts who look at the data and they figure out, oh, this is a malaria grant, oh, this is a tuberculosis grant, or this is a music education grant. But we're automating the process more and more because we've got a really good history of the folks giving codes, giving grants codes. Foundations, when they submit data to us, also have the option of putting the grants into our taxonomy or into their taxonomy, which actually helps us tremendously because then we don't have to do any guesswork if there's not very much description text. But what our efforts now, because we're about to get a ton more data per year, per month, that we are automating it, so we're using some data science methods to automatically assign codes where the descriptions are fairly obvious. There are a lot of descriptions that are in here. Let's say the Crystal Bridges Art Museum, to establish endowment of funds for capital acquisitions, operations, and artwork. This one will be really clearly, machines will be able to guess that this is for art museums. And probably in capital acquisitions, it's kind of, the words are right there. So the short version of the answer is, we used to do it all by hand, and now we're automating a lot of it. Well, okay, cool. So let's keep going a little bit. Let's do I'm going to do another one, which is going to be transaction type. So I'm going to clear out support strategies, and let's go look at transaction type. So we've got cash grants. Again, that's what almost everything is. Employee matching gifts, grants to individuals, in-kind gifts, pro bono services. Under pro bono services, we have legal services. So Splendor must have donated legal services. So let's look at pro bono legal. Well, not very many of them. There are only 7 grants like this. Looks like the main recipients, the Central Kansas Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. That would be individual grants themselves. And let's take a look at this $200,000 grant from the Ford Foundation to mobilize pro bono legal assistance for nonprofit organizations. So, again, the transaction type is pro bono legal services, and it's pretty cool. It really help you narrow down the features you're looking for if you're looking for a certain kind of funding or for a certain kind of partner.
Okay, another question. When there are multiple support strategies listed, does this mean that the specific grant you are looking at targets all of these support strategies?
That's what it should mean. In the cases, let's say that a grant is, let's take a look at another one. I think we had one a second ago where the support strategy was mixed. Capacity building and technical assistance and program development. I've actually seen a lot of cases where these two are together. So yes, there's definitely cases where it overlaps, and then and also cases where it's kind of a judgment call. In some cases, based on the description, you can say yes, it's general support, but it's also some other type of support. This one is again, we built this taxonomy in consultation with funders and with nonprofits, primarily with funders. But you know, it's hard to. It's generally speaking, it's actually easier to give a grant multiple subjects, multiple types of support, and multiple population groups rather than having to pick one. Picking one, you know, is usually the tougher judgment call than adding a couple. Okay, cool. Well, guys, we'll call it here. Again, feel free to email us at maps@foundationcenter.org, and we can answer more questions or go into more detail and nuance or talk about, you know, new features that you'd love to see or anything that you can even complain. We allow complaints. So thanks a lot, and hopefully you'll tune in for the next one, which will be in, we'll notify you guys relatively soon.
Okay, thank you.